be long.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
You good to go?
Yeah, recording.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Three, two, one. Hello, guys. Welcome to another YouTube video. I hope this is first of many of a series with my best friend Helen. And yeah, so we kind of got this inspo because her boyfriend used to make videos like this. And honestly, like listening to that video and like, seeing these talks like through a Zoom call and like seeing you being recorded and uploaded really inspired me because I feel like for the last couple of years, I've been kind of like, in a way, just making up excuses of like not making videos. And I think a big part of it was like time and whatnot. But I think, like seeing that, you can just be done on Zoom, I was just like, okay, well, like, why not? So that was
Yeah.
like my motivation to start. How about you, Helen? What's on your end? How are you feeling about, starting this?
Yeah. I mean, I think Alex's like little podcast is one thing, but then I also do think like in general, from our side being like our little friend group, we've been pushing Farron to like record podcasts for the past 2 years now. The last time we were talking about it before this. The last time that she did this was 2 years ago, and then we talked. I think the last couple topics was like a commitment or not a commitment, but they have commitment issues. That would be an interesting one to circle back on. Your attachment styles, and then there's also we one for navigating through your 20s and moving out, which is also interesting because that was done right after we had a summer away, which
Mhm.
is a very different type of moving out than the moving out that we're doing now. So 2 years later, we're still navigating through your 20s, and we're still navigating through moving out.
And I
But
feel
yeah.
like we know less. Like before, I feel like when we did that video, I felt like I knew more. I don't know. It's that thing that's like the more you go in your 20s and progress in life, I feel like I feel even more behind or even more confused. While like when I was young, I thought I felt like I had more stuff figured out when we did the video 2 years ago versus now.
No, like I think about that too. Like I think all of our videos that we've done, like we always do it in a state where I think we have some level of like, realization, or we've come to some level of like conclusion about certain things, like whether it's traveling, or like I think our New Year's videos, like goals and like moving out. It's always in some type of like conclusion format where you're reflecting on something that's good and something that you have learned about. But I think it might be like equally interesting to like record something or do something, document something while you're like completely lost, and you're just like, okay, like see, maybe you can. Yeah, I think rewatching back the videos you have on your YouTube, I always think like, okay, wow, okay, good to know that I thought I had it figured out back then, but you
Yeah.
know,
You do make a good point. Like you are right. We used to kind of make videos in the way of like concluding something, right? But I feel like in the whole progress and documentation type, that isn't something that we've touched on too much too. So it's really nice seeing like Alex, for example, really do it like, very early on, which I was surprised that he was like a freshman or something. And I was like, you're talking like this, which is so crazy. But I think one thing was like, yeah, like having that documentation is something that is like needed. And like I feel like even if we do go to post it publicly or whatever it is, right, I think it's just something that we like these conversations, we won't really have it captured unless it's on video like this. So it's been really
yeah,
nice to like take a leap of faith with this and see where it goes. And I think in a way, I'm really glad it's with you because out of everyone in my life, you're like the one person that definitely does challenge me in a way that I feel like, like if we like we can talk for hours and hours and hours on end. And I love that because I think that that's needed for like maybe a conversation like this with like no script. Like literally, we have no
mm.
script. We don't even know where we're going with this direct. Today, I was trying to think of a few things, but then I was like, no, I think that maybe the more raw and more authentic it is, it just, maybe in a way resonates with us more in the future and other people who do kind of listen to it. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
just like kind of like where my headspace has been like with this whole video type stuff going on. And I think that like for Helen and I in particular, we're like, even though we're the same age and everything, we are in a bit of a different phase in our life where Helen, she graduated like last year. So she's been working a little over, not little, a year and a half almost, I think. And then for me, I've just been working like 2 months. So it's been like a pretty big, like, thing, like a lot of life updates, a lot of life changes. Like, how have you felt for the past, I mean, like 1 year and a half? Like, it's been such a huge shift with like, moving and traveling and like work and like how do you feel like that transition has been like for you? Do
Yeah, I
you
think I I don't know. I had a thought before or when you were talking about this about like documenting thing before jumping into the 1 year thing. I
yeah.
was also I remember like even moving out or like in the past year and a half, there were a couple like moments where I was binging your old videos. I think it
Oh,
might have been like the New Year's or like I remember watching it on my TV where I was like, like watching our 2023 was it 20
mm,
no, what? It must have been like 2022 New Year's video.
that's
I think I listened to like one of the very early like how to get girls or something like that
yeah.
while I was doing work, and I'm like, oh, I watched some of your vlogs. I had an era where I think I was rewatching a lot of your videos, and it
Really?
like makes me like. I think I was texting you guys. I was rewatching it too, and I
Mhm.
think I was rewatching I think even like Rhea and Ruben for New Year's 1 year. I think you weren't there that year.
Yeah.
It would have been like 2023 New Year's, where the three of us hung out and we recorded a little video in the car, and I rewatched it, but they didn't post it to anything. But I remember rewatching it and then like sending them like some of my thoughts, probably near the end of the year last year because I was thinking about like, oh, where did we start? Where are we ended now? So I think recording video is a big thing, and it's good because I rewatch it and I think. Do you ever rewatch your old videos?
No, I feel like
You
I
should.
don't. I should, but I think I only rewatch it when I get reminded of it, or like when someone says, like, like I forgot where about showing one of my friends, like, oh, I used to record videos. And I think they were like watching it, and I was like, oh, like, I think it's hearing that voice again,
Yeah.
but I should, like, even though I haven't, I should because I haven't reflected on that. And I think I'm like, I did talk to you about this, how I'm like, I don't like reflecting about the past too much. Like, I'm a very
Mm,
reflective person, but like, I feel like I have trouble kind of like being nostalgic, even though like this isn't nostalgic as much, but like, that I don't know, maybe it does bring up like feelings and stuff that I don't want to. I don't know, like I have no clue why I don't in particular, but I should because no, I agree. It does like show a lot of progress and growth throughout the year, so that's like pretty good.
mm. I mean, I think that's an interesting point actually, because I do think you're reflective and like you will like reflect on certain things, but I do think like you might be a little bit avoidant with certain things, right? Like, because a lot of them might have overlapped with like harder parts of like the things that you've gone through in your life, and then like even though you don't talk about that in the podcast, it might have reminded you of those certain things that were happening during that time, and then yeah, I don't know. That's interesting because I
Wait,
feel like it's not like we talk about because I feel like that. I think it's one thing if you rewatch the content and you think okay, like whatever I was saying back then, like made no sense. Like, oh, who's this girl? Like, who's this 22 years old version of myself, or who's this like 20 years old version of myself? Like, I think there's an element of cringe from like watching your old self speak, but which I also get. Like, but it's more usually for me, like it comes from more of a, oh, like damn, I thought I knew what was going on back then, and like every year when I watch it, I'm like, oh, I did not know what was going on, or like I thought I knew, right? But that I guess that's life. That's how you grow. But yeah. So I don't know. If it's not like that for you, then is it that? Do you think like it's the content that you talk about, or is it more like
no,
it's you?
because even you were talking like you mentioned, oh, like maybe it brings you back to like certain times or whatever, but no, like I remember, like I love our Vancouver trip, like that will never bring back a bad memory or anything, right? Like so for me, or like even that time in my life, I think I was happy and like things were going well. I just feel like, okay, you know what's interesting, I don't look back on my videos, but I do look back on my notes, which I think is even worse, like my notes app, because I was just opening it up yesterday from like notes from like 2018, 2019, like yeah, even years ago, like a couple years ago, even this year, I do like look back on my notes app and not on my YouTube videos, which is also pretty documented for some stuff. So honestly, I don't know, but when I do think about that more, I'll figure it out because it was
Yeah.
cool. Like I was actually this is really cool. Like kind of show you did I show you the one where I decided to go into engineering? Like I back in 2019 in January, like when we were going from high school to what's it called? like yeah, high school to university, I like wrote on my app like why I chose engineering. Anyway, it's like a little cool segment until I guess the next part. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Show me,
I
show
was
the
reading and I
audience.
was like, whoa, what's happening? But yeah, I said so in January 4th, 2019, I said I think this probably might have been like an essay I was submitting to like, I don't know, like UBC or like something like U of T. I have no idea. Maybe it wasn't, but I remember saying my interest regarding engineering primarily started when my family and I took a trip to San Francisco in the summer of 2015. I was young and naive, always exploring the world around me and was always continuously asking questions. As my family and I toured the city, I got fascinated by its unique buildings and the effective and efficient subway and buses. This reminded me back when I lived in Montreal during 2012. Oh, since I was little, the memories of the city felt like a blur. Walking, discovering more about San Francisco dragged me more into how a city was built. I could tell that the people who created and designed the city really loved their work. I saw the Bay Bridge, City Hall, and from that moment on, I knew I wanted to go into this field, which
Yo,
is
that's crazy. That's
crazy.
actually good.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you fell.
It's okay. Wait, hold on. Can you hear me?
Wait, wait, yeah. I can hear you, but yeah.
Okay, don't worry about it. This is
That's
crazy.
actually crazy. What the heck? Yeah, that's a full circle moment for I guess for the audience,
Yeah.
whoever's watching this. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you don't know, like Farron just moved into her apartment in San Francisco, got a job, and moved out. So
Yeah,
this is your first big city or big move of your adult life.
it is.
Because I feel like Toronto is yeah, but like that's like an actual moving out experience. But as we both know now, like moving out temporarily for your internship is very different than moving out when you need to start a life somewhere or like you're planning on starting some type of life somewhere. So
Mhm.
that's I mean that's crazy. I always knew that you loved San Francisco because even when we were planning our first San Francisco trip, it was between LA or whatever, and like even before that, I remember you went to another San Francisco trip. Was there one after 2018 and before 2022 when we went, or was it just
No,
2018
it
and
was just
2022?
2018.
Okay, because I remember like it was a big thing that you loved the city, and that's why
Yeah,
we ended up going.
I know.
And yeah, that's crazy.
I
Full
know.
circle moment.
That's true. And I guess like yeah, you also lived here too and in the future and etc. That's gonna happen too. So that's very exciting to I don't know, just so crazy to see this like big transition in our lives. Like, like what you said is right. Like, internship versus like post grad life is like completely different, like when it comes to like, yes, how time is like definite, like, when it's gonna end. So, a lot of the stuff that you do, but now it's like everything is indefinite, it can go on for like ages and ages. And I think that like I guess kind of going back a bit, but why I feel like I decided to do this podcast is actually when I moved. I don't know why, but I've had such a big urgency just to like talk. Like I don't know why. I just need to talk all the time. I've I've just been wanting to yap to like everyone and everything. And I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, yes, like I am a yapper and I know you are, but I feel like to the core, I just want to yap. And I was like, let's just record it. And like, I don't know, I see it as like progress and go on from there. And I feel like that's just a very big thing that's like tied to this like move that I've just been so like in a way very socially energetic sometimes. I find myself like really wanting to like meet new people, like going out more and like or just like talking, like even if there's no substance to the talk, I just feel like I need to talk. And I don't know where this is coming from, but did you feel like that when you first moved? Like how was your first initial, or was it, I know it's like hectic, but
Yeah, it's so different. But that's so interesting. Do you think it's because like you in your last like year and a half ish of like being in Calgary? I mean, I wasn't there, right? Like for that last year and a half ish when you were in Calgary. Like but I remember before I left too, you were a bit more like busy and occupied. But then do you think it's because you were in a state where you're more closed off? Like obviously you still like hung out and you still hung out with people, you still did events, but do you think it's because for like you didn't get to do the like when you're in Calgary for that last year, you really wanted to move, so you
yeah.
didn't really like have that, or like you were in a pause state of waiting for the next thing to happen. So it's a weird in between stage. So you didn't get your yap through, or you felt like maybe you were more reserved with your energy, and now you have like a safe spot to like start yapping and building these relationships. You just want to do it all at once. You
Probably. I
think?
think that like the move in a way, even though I know it's been like really hectic, like similar to you when you first move, like you are on fight or flight for a lot of it, and just like a lot of it is like logistics. But I think beyond that part of like the logistics side of things, there is a lot of, you know, energy and like anticipation and excitement. But for me, I
Mm-hmm.
think it just like manifested into this, right? I feel like that inner child in all of us that's just like, when you're trying to reach a goal for so long, like, yes, a huge part of it is like the logistics and planning and doing all that. But like to the core of it, right? It's like, oh my God, you're moving to a city and to like a different country, and like you're living alone, and like you're doing something that you always wanted to do for so long. So I feel like it's just that energy manifested in like so many different ways. So I think that's just like one of my ways to like that I've been like manifest, like trying to get it out, because I've noticed like I'm just always talking to random people, just talking to, like, I don't know why, like where like I feel like the extroverted level that I had before, sometimes it's been like even more amplified. So yeah, no, it's been like, this is good that it's like a designated just like yap session. So maybe this is what helps like get me out of, like, get it out of my system. I'm not too
Mm-hmm.
sure. But yeah, it's been like, how about you? I know that for you, we were talking a bit about like you know, building community and like the social aspect of stuff. And like I know like work gets like pretty hectic. Do you feel like you become a bit more on the introverted side, I think, that you were mentioning?
Yeah, I actually think like when I first moved is very opposite, but I also do think it's like my move and your move might have felt different because I know for you, like, you just shared your notes app from like 2019. Like, even if you weren't purposefully, like, for a while, you're looking at Toronto, you're looking at New York, like San Francisco was not something that you were purposely seeking out. It just like worked out that way, and like, friends worked out that way, etc. But it's like something that you have been looking forward to, and it feels semi-permanent for you. And like, I know at least for the near future, you don't really see a big move coming up. But I think for me, like, when I first, I mean, I guess like, yeah, for the audience, I live in Austin, Texas, in the United States of America. Austin's a great city. When I first moved, I think it was more about I wanted to establish some type of routine. I was in a, like, I feel like a rut of a year for ever since I went back, like after my internship in the Bay Area, when I went back from my last year of schooling and applying for jobs and like applying for grad school, waiting in between. Like, it felt like kind of a weird gap year where, yeah, like there were times where it was really busy and very like, uncertain. But I think even the busyness like for like capstone applications, like the stress came from more of an uncertainty aspect rather than like a um yeah, came from a more of a place of uncertainty rather than like of just pure sheer busyness or like productivity. And I was in the in between stage. So when I first moved, I was actually like craving productivity, craving routine, craving like, making progress in some aspect of my life. I felt like I have all these like dreams and ambitions that I want to like tackle first. So I think my energy was less channeled in the social perspective. I obviously still tried, and I think I'm still at the core someone that, I mean, I think everyone is to some degree. Like, you need social connections, you need community and whatnot. But I do think, because like, one, I don't think Austin's like my forever city or a forever place. Although like I actually really like this place. I really like Austin. I'm glad Rhea came to visit me so then she can spread the Austin propaganda back in Calgary. I
Yeah.
think whenever I tell people that I moved here, they're always like, "Oh, Austin, interesting." Which I mean, it's like, it's not the San Francisco, it's not the New Yorks of the world, but I
Yeah.
think I wanted something different. And I think actually Austin was the perfect place to start out, because with my job, if I started out where it was supposed to be, which is in the Bay Area, I definitely would not have done like what maybe our friends did, where they live in San Francisco, they commute to South Bay for work. I definitely would have started out in South Bay. And if I started out in South Bay, it's just going to be expensive. Like, it's going to be super suburby. And like, I'm like, I don't think like it's going to be much more different than my experience here. And if anything, like living in the city and like, in a nicer place, gives me more of a sense of like independency, and gives me like, lets me garner some of my introvert energy for a little bit. But yeah, that was a lot of yap, but yeah.
No, I think definitely like, it's good. Like I know that even in the future, you do see yourself a bit maybe living in a city like the Bay Area, right? So I think with that, like, it's good that you took this time right after grad to like, experiment and go with like other places, right? Like Austin being one, which is like different and like getting to live there versus just like now you're, going straight from like Calgary to like, what it was like in South Bay, the whole like commuting, like that day-to-day life. You already experienced that. So it's good that, which is not that like people I think sometimes who maybe don't know the Bay Area that well probably romanticize it, like, oh,
Mm,
you're still close to San Francisco, but like the lifestyle
not
there is not
yet.
what you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's definitely nice. I feel like Austin, it's a quirky little city and there's a lot to do nearby. And I get to still work at the company I work at and still grow my career the same way. And if not, if like anything, I do think this is like a whole separate discussion, but my job was meant to be in the Bay Area. They messed up my offer and then I like negotiated to keep it in Austin. And then, like, yeah, if anything, I think it kind of also worked out for my job too, being the only person here on our team that's in Austin and closer to some of the, like, yeah, like it gives me more of a unique role to play. So I think career wise, it actually helped out, and I don't think I sacrificed like time in my 20s and whatnot to do this, but
Exactly.
yeah, I do like have a craving for a larger so like community or social connections that can like help me grow in the next stages of my life, etc. So I think it's pending. I do think like I think my time in Austin is not going to be forever, but so
But I'm glad,
yeah.
it still was like even within the year and a half, like you did a lot with the city and like, you made the best out of it. And like even there's like obviously like Austin is very big with like, tech companies and all of that thing too. So it's very good like career wise. So, it's good. Like for example, like, it's crazy how different like people like even though, we did kind of start from the same place, it's like,
Mm,
we were both like, you ended up in Austin and then like, now I just started like the same time you were in Austin, I was like in Calgary, right? So it's like not that big of a, how do I explain it? Like, like sometimes people are afraid that their time is like, I
mm,
think that sometimes they're afraid of making the wrong decision because they think that like their time, like they don't have enough time or, they're running out of time and like maybe they should just optimize and whatever, right? But literally when you look at us relatively, like I extended my degree and you like graduated like on time and quote unquote and stuff like that, right? And you like within that time, like I just stayed in Calgary and you stayed in Austin and like, that's good that you took that leap of faith and went there because you had a whole new trajectory of life events and like experiences and like, a whole new taste to a brand new city. And even like, you did have your experience back in like South Bay, right? So I think it
mm,
is like I feel like I'm glad that you did that because of the fact that like, oh, I know that some people would hesitate on doing that because a lot of
mm.
people do think that like, oh, like we're getting too old or we're making the wrong decision, but I don't believe there's any wrong decision, right? Like, life is a lot more flexible and I think that you also work in that way. So, it's like stuff is definitely happening the way that, maybe it was meant to be. Like you're just all working out well together. So it's good to see that, a year and a half later, like this is kind of like the outcome of like making that decision that you made back then.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, I do think it's like a weird leap of faith. I don't know if it's like a. Yeah, I feel like in comparison, right? Like I think in the eyes of other people, like it could seem like, oh, you're moving to a like random city, and I felt like that too. But I think it was actually more exciting because it was random or like it's somewhat unknown. Like I have been like in Austin, obviously. I went to Austin once before I moved for this job, but I think in February I started my job in May, but I visited in February. Because Alex was living there, or Alex is living there, but he was going to school here too, and it like somehow kind of worked out, and I was interested by like a different environment, and I think, yeah, it's definitely like I feel like the unknown is always more interesting when you're more when you have seen kind of what like the Bay Area had to how I felt like what the Bay Area had to offer. But obviously, I also think like in another way, it's also helpful that while I started my life here and I got to like do a lot of the more like adulting stability driven like aspects where yes like like I saved a bit more money versus if I lived out like in the Bay Area I can like I also need a car, so I had to get a car, and I went through all the freaking car struggles that I went through. But I
Oh,
finally got a car that I want, and like that works out, and like so and so forth, and like yeah, I get to live in a nicer, like more comfortable apartment,
a
and like
modern apartment. Don't
like I don't even know how I'm gonna survive when I move to the Bay Area. Like, what do you mean?
run
I
down Victorian.
have a rooftop pool. What do you mean I can't have like new appliances?
Yeah.
But
North
uh,
Carolina has a rooftop pool with a wait, what's the golf thing again?
a golf simulator, yeah. Like, what do
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah.
But yeah,
You
like
have to literally go there like every day and like experience every last like bit of it before you move because that is yeah, I think that's one thing that's like a big transition into because I do forget the like bigger metropolitan cities, like the biggest ones are like the oldest ones, like New York is like so old and so San Francisco and like man, they're just
bro,
like
if I moved to New York, it would be like obviously like it comes with all the perks, right? I
yeah,
do think like seeing your life, seeing like our other friends' lives in
yeah.
New York or not New York in SF, but like even my other friends from work that moved out into SF that are commuting to work, it's like I see all the upsides as well, where it's like you make that sacrifice for a sense of community, you make that sacrifice for like career growth in a lot of senses, like being in a big city provides you that networking, that like being in the hub of like technology development if you're in SF, and like knowing where all the happenings are. I think if you're someone that cares about all of those things, like being in the city is definitely like it's worth the sacrifices. But I'm glad that I saw you guys like go through that first while I get to have this experience,
Yeah.
and then like I make that transition when I fully know like what is at the different like what's on the other side, and I know like what I'm sacrificing for, um and like I'm maybe can be more like purposeful or intentful with my time there if I do move to like San Francisco in the city, right? Like I
Yeah.
think I'll be more yeah, I'll be more purposeful with like what I'm trying to get out of the city, which is other than like yeah community living, meeting people, the art, the
Mhm.
culture, but also the career aspect, and like yeah, do you think you see yourself living inside in SF for a long time?
It's like weird. Like, I don't know. I feel like definitely not. It depends, because like, that's also like maybe I don't know, work changes in the future, like whatever happens there. But I think like right now my area, like Mission District, is like too much. Like, I like
Too much of
it's too much. Like I love like I mean like right now I think it's perfect for like the time of my life where I am like young and I'm like okay with like this environment and everything like that. But sometimes like when I'm like I have this Citizen app and there's literally like I don't know some shit going on every single day. Like there's always like a shooting or like something like police cars or like stabbings nearby. And like I don't know, for me I was like, oh, it doesn't seem like it, but I think maybe in a few of the sketchier streets that
yeah.
I haven't been to. But I think that in a way, living in a very hectic environment, like like I have my morning commute where I'm just listening to jazz and like chilling, relaxing. Then I like take the BART station and I'm like, oh my god, because like the train itself is fine, but the stations in a way are filled with a lot of homelessness, and I don't like homeless population. And for me, I don't really like the fact that I'm becoming more desensitized to it. But I think that just like the nature of how a lot of people that do live here, you're just seeing this
You
every
have to,
day.
yeah.
You just have to be desensitized. And I think I don't like that kind of perspective. I feel like before that's not something that we're really used to when we do live in Canada. I know Calgary does have that, but I just feel like seeing that is like a bit hard sometimes. But other than that, like I think that it's really nice having friends and everything like this nearby, but I would see myself like living in other parts of SF probably. Like I always thought about like, oh, maybe in a couple years, like near the like outer Richmond, like just near the water or something like that. Like, but then that comes with like having a car. And South Bay, I feel like I just maybe associated with just like families. So that's why I don't even like think about that part there, just because it is a lot to do and everything like that. Like, no, yeah, I think maybe Palo Alto is the max. Like I think anything below that is like even further out. Like you have to like the commute is just like insane. Like it can go for like hours. I think that because I think that's
I
where
mean, there's a lot of jobs that are in South Bay too, though, right?
that's
Like a lot of big companies are based out in not in SF, if
Yeah,
anything. Yeah.
exactly. Like we actually had a friend that I got introduced to a month and a half. Like it's like a mutual friend, and he works down in South Bay, and he like lives in South Bay too, in Palo Alto area. And he was just living here for like the last week because like one of our friends in this building, she like was out like visiting her family, so he was just like staying here for like a week and kind of having like a whole like mock week of like, is it doable to like commute all the way down to like the south? And I think like for him, he was talking about how like a lot of it is a lot of sacrifices you have to make like time wise and like there's like the shuttle times and the train, like all of that, right? Like it's a lot more like the commute here definitely like I feel like for me, I take it for granted a lot just because I'm only an 18-minute commute. But then I talk to
Mm.
people here who are like definitely like an hour is like on their lower end. So I think that it's all like a like gamble in the future. So who knows? But I think right now I'm content with
Yeah.
where I am, and it's like lively and like a lot of friends nearby. And I
Mm.
think like having that support is really good because when I was looking for a few places, like kind of in like a lot of different areas, I remember when I came back one time and I was like at Camilla's and I was just like, should I like go to like should I sign this like lease for this 1715 studio near like Lands End Lookout? And I had such a debate. And I was so close to doing it, but I'm really glad I didn't because yeah, I feel like, that there is like that big initial wave of loneliness that does happen with like anyone that moves. Like it doesn't matter where your support system is, what your support system is. Maybe it's like friends, family, a partner. I think that loneliness always just comes because you're just not really used to it. You're surrounded by like community or family, and then now it's like all of a sudden like, whoa, like what is my new norm? Like what is my go-to? Who are my go-to? Like who do I talk to? So for me, I think that kind of in a way really helped. And I think I was really like kind of softened up into like that loneliness. Like, for me, I was just like constantly hanging out with friends or going out just because they were so nearby, like a 8-minute scooter, 18-minute walk. Like it was like anytime
Mm.
they'd be free, I'd just go down there or they'd come up and etc. But for me, I think it took a while for me to really like, I think I was afraid to kind of like be alone. I think that
Mm.
everyone feels that. Like that's why like when my friends were, well, it's like not because I had a choice really. It was kind of like I was forced to be alone when my friends had a freaking 160 30 or 130-kilometer bike race in Malibu. And then my other friend, she was busy too, and because her boyfriend came. And then like just because of like timing and everything, the whole week I was like, wait, holy shit, I think I'm just like alone. But in a way,
Mm.
I think I'm really glad I got that wave of like loneliness out of like, kind of out. And I mean, of course, it comes in waves, but I think the initial one, I was just really avoidant and very afraid of being alone. But now I'm
Mm.
glad because, I was like able to get through it the first time. And I also forgot how fun it is like spending time alone. So I'm really glad I got to like revisit that and like enjoy that to like a better extent than like, just kind of putting a band-aid over like this huge wave of loneliness and like always going out with like people and having a big social life.
Yeah.
So,
That's actually so interesting because I feel like I was in such an opposite, like, or I mean, like, we approach, we've approached this moving out thing so differently. I mean, obviously, it's also because of like geological location and like whether or not, like, there's a lot of Calgary folks that also moved out to San Francisco area at the same time, near the same, all of it in the same area. Most
right.
of them all work in the same company. So it's very much like a set community there. And like I think a lot of the times, like whenever I talk to Alex, right, because I mean, when I moved here, one lucky thing is like my roommate from California also ended up moving to Austin. So I had two very solid people in my life, which is like my boyfriend Alex, who's going to school here still, and like and my roommate that moved. And like, but at the same time, it's not like an everyday thing. And I think like I was very much craving like being alone, or not. I don't know if craving being alone is the right word, but like I think I wanted to show to myself that I can be alone, because I think like before I left like Calgary, I was in a I mean, it makes sense. It made sense, right? Like I also wanted to spend like a lot of time with my friends before I left. I didn't want to be like alone all the time. And I think for
Mm,
the longest time to have always been someone that like did not like doing things alone. And then I felt like I always needed someone to do something with me, but then like that sometimes manifests in a way where I think about like, oh, if I'm not capable of being alone through like major moments, then like, am I not complete? Am I not whole? Like, I don't want to have to rely on other people. And I think to combat that, one of the bigger things I was trying to do was like, okay, solo traveling, right? Like, I wanted to go somewhere. I didn't want to wait to see if friends had time. Like, like I didn't want to pass up on opportunities that I wanted to do just because people around me didn't want to do it or like couldn't get the time or money or whatever to figure it out, which is like fine. But it's just I think solo traveling was the first big move, um and then I think like but I think afterwards, like I think I'm a lot better with being alone than I was like maybe, like ever since I was growing up, for the past like 2 3 years. But I do think like moving out was a big one where I'm like, okay, like I truly wanted to sip in that like not like loneliness, but I wanted to like I don't know, like I don't know who I wanted to show. Like if it's proving to myself, family, friends, whatever, that like, like I can do this, I can like build my routine and like, lock in. Like I think I've been like pretty just locked into work. So it's a very different like environment. But I do think the opposite is true now where I feel like I've shown myself or like, I've done this. I know how it looks like to be alone, to like, do my own routine, to like I think I've grown to be a lot more of an introvert too. Like I like being alone, I like being home, I like doing things by myself. But I think at some point now it's the opposite where I like being alone a little too much that I think I reject the idea of like social interaction, not like social interaction, but like big social gatherings or things that require more social energies. I think my internal like default now is like that like sounds like so much work. So now I think like it's time for the opposite where like maybe I do want to I think like I crave it, but at the same time, I like when you talk about your life in like SF, or I see your guys' life through like your IGs or like catching up with friends, like it seems so fun. But at the same time, like I think my default isn't like, oh, I want this immediately, and it's
Yes.
like, but that sounds so tiring. But I don't think that's good for me either, right? So I think it's almost like the opposite where I'm like, okay, I think I had my time of gathering my energy. Now I do want to at least like go back to like take my step outside of my world a little bit more. And I
Mm.
think for you, whereas like I do think for you, after you settle in a little bit more, and like that part of the yapping phase too, right? Like I do think that has to do with like like not that you can't be alone, because I think one that week is a good like initial example, but you've still only been in SF for like two
Yeah.
months, right? At some point like things are going to change, your like tempo for life will be a little bit different too, your day to day, and like you're gonna have more waves of that loneliness, and like it's still going to be like a very personal journey. So I think we're kind of headed the opposite directions where like you have that community or have that fulfillment, and maybe you need to like head towards finding out what this means for yourself without like others, like without that larger community of like kind of that band-aid solution. Whereas for me, I think my band-aid is like to be alone, because going out or like being out and about seems very tiring. But I do think it's like something that I need, so I need to do things to push myself to get into that state. So I
Mm.
think it's like interesting how our moving out journey like went the opposite way, but I think we need to find balance in our own respective ways.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. No, that is true. Like even when you were saying when you first moved out too, I remember hearing your stories and like you talking about how like a lot of it was, yeah, you were, I think like you definitely became a lot more okay with being alone. Like from where I've seen you in Calgary, like I think now like that you mentioned that's like your default. But then I think about it, I was like, wait, that's like not how it was like at all when we were in Calgary, you know? And I
I
think
was, yeah, everything I did, I'm like, guys, where are you?
yeah, no, I
Like,
get it. And like obviously, I loved it. And
I
like
miss it. I mean, I kind of miss it. I miss my attachment. So I
yeah,
miss
it's
my
funny. I think I have become a clingy person. I'm a
yeah.
clingy person. I'm always like, guys, like, what are you doing without me? Like, don't talk, don't breathe without me. Like, I think I've definitely become a lot more of a clingy person, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I don't think I wasn't not clingy in Calgary. I was very sociable, but I think
Yeah.
nowadays I feel like like in Calgary, I was definitely a lot more sociable, but I think maybe less dependent, but now become like a
Yeah.
lot dependent on others, which is like, what is going on? Like, what is, I don't know what's going on. But I think it just like, yeah, when you move, it's like different versions of yourself unlocking because you are in like new environments that you haven't been before. And it's just like a lot of it is just like challenging yourself too. I think what's interesting too is like, okay, so you know how you're talking about like meeting new people and whatever and whatnot. Like for me, I think one thing that I miss is like I feel like I miss the fact that, you know, let's say if I meet someone new, I miss that version of myself kind of like exercising that part, those parts, right? Like for example, when I meet someone new, it's like, you know, you're kind of forced to like, you know, yeah, like a talk to them and do a like, you know, just explain who you are and like go through the whole tangent of things.
Mm,
But for me, I think I missed that actually just because, you know, I think I stayed in Calgary longer than I wanted to. So because of
mm,
that, I think it was just like the same environment, same familiarity. So for me, that
mm,
part of myself where I was like meeting new people and like exercising those parts that were like very more aspirational or very like
mm,
sociable and maybe more charismatic and a lot more like articulative, I think I was lacking because they weren't really like being practiced. You know, it was just the same people and like same environments, which I love. Like, of course, I love them. But for me, to the core, like, I think I also like similar to you, like, I like growth and change and in a way, just like trying to challenge myself. So because of the fact that like, you know, now that I'm like here and whatnot, like I think that I've just been lazy on like making new friends. But I think
mm.
that when I do make new friends and exercise that, I feel so like much more satisfied because I like unlocking that version of myself, you know, where I'm like, you know, people just get to like they have no idea who I am and like they figure me out from like complete scratch. And then like I do like the fact that, you know, building relationships based on like no background, I think in a way is really nice because it's like all we've known, you know, we've lived in Canada and primarily Calgary our whole lives, you know? So because of that, it is like the same environment. And people, you know, they know us maybe even not through a friend, but like a mutual friend or a friend of a friend or always an Instagram follow mutual, which sometimes is like kind of like a bit mentally daunting. Like, no, you know, it's nice not to have like any
Any
preconceived, yeah,
expectations? Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
perceptions of like who you could be or who you are, you know? So I think that's something that's been like a thing that I've like, you know, that's been in a way what I've been craving a lot during this move. And I mean, I say crave this, but like I also haven't done much. Like I've only been to one time left dinner and other stuff. But like, you know, I think that a part of that was because I was clinging on to like, you know, even my Calgary friends that I had, but then even those friends, I was clinging on to their friends because, you know, then they became really close to me. And like, because, you know, in a way, it's kind of like this somewhat of like a filter system. Like you already know that they're somewhat of a similar, you know, vibe and whatnot, right? So for me, it was just like, I don't know why. I think it was so crazy. Like, I feel like I wanted change in environment, change in everything else, but I was just like clinging on to like familiarity and like comfort. And I was like, guys, don't leave me. Like, you know, so such a weird
Yeah,
internal like balance that I was like going through.
yeah. I think, yeah, I want to see you make more new friends, Farron. I think our obviously Calgary friends is great, and like I do think like that's a basis of what you need, right? Like when you move to a new place, but at the same time, like, ah, yeah, I don't know. Like there's something that I just like kind of hate about like Calgary. Or I'm not hating Calgary, but I hate that I've lived in that place for so long, and like I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, right? Like where like you know there's I think to start off with, like I don't think I'm ashamed of any versions of my old self, or like I think I like you know I've been true to who I am since like you know day one, and I've been like doing things for like how I think I want to live my life. Like I don't think I'm someone with any regrets, but at the same time too, it's like I don't want like, you know, everyone. I feel like in
Mhm.
some way we already know the whole like not the whole city, but like everyone in your similar demographic, in your similar age range, like it's gonna be friends of a friend, like, you know, and people are gonna talk and like, you know, as much as like a lot of like whatever people say, like I don't really care, but at the same time, it's like, you know, I don't want that to affect new friendships that I can make and like their perspective of like, you know, who they might think I am and then if I want to change. And it's like yeah, it kind of puts you in a box in a weird way where even if it's like not intentional or like even if you don't think about it too often, like I get like moments where I'm like, oh, like you know, like okay, like this is a part of that life, and like which is interesting when it comes to like social media because like my Instagram is still predominantly like 99% people from Calgary, like, my Instagram, like, it's from when I was in junior high, middle school, right? Like everyone that I've known and I accumulated during that time. Obviously, there's some newer connections from like internship days, from like full time, but like the friends, the scale at which I was socializing when I was younger versus now is very different. So that I see people posting their life and like, updates, and like it just feels so like interesting where it's like, okay, I'm no longer a part of that life, but then like, I don't know, I haven't fully grasped it yet. And even like when I go hang out with, like when I go visit like Fatima and Camilla and Etienne and them, and like, the in SF, whenever I do my little Bay Area trips before you moved to, it's like super nice seeing them, but it's like a very nice grounding aspect, because I think meeting new people, one thing too is like they know a very different version of you. It's the version of you that's currently, but they're not going to know like the version of you previously. And like I think all of those versions of you like add up to who you really are, right? Like I think it's interesting too, because I remember like in our little friend circle before we moved, like one of the things is like, oh, Helen is the most younger sibling energy person ever. And with any new people that I've met ever since I've moved, whenever we talk about like, yeah, like sibling dynamics, everyone always said that I give off older sibling vibes, which
Mm,
is like
I can see that.
very, very polar opposite to like, my default state when I was like with our friends in Calgary, right? So it's just like it shows you that like the version that they know you for when you move, like, or at this stage of my life, is going to seem very, very different than the version I am when I'm like with you guys, or like with
Mhm.
friends from like that I grew up with or whatnot. So I think
Mhm.
it's a interesting balance of like, I like it because it reminds me of like, a certain version of myself. But sometimes I also don't like it because it puts me in a box. But then like with new people, like I like it because I get to reinvent myself a little bit. But like I also don't really like it because like, like
Same.
you don't know the full like, picture of who you are. And it takes a lot to like show them the full picture of who you are, who you've been, and like, yeah.
For sure. No, I agree too. Like even when you were saying like how when you moved, you a lot of people thought you were like a older sibling, but that's also in a way really cool because you're not a one-dimensional person at all. Like you can always change based on environment. And I mean, even though like it's interesting because yes, you can change based on environment, but you're still really true to who you are, like your fundamentals. That hasn't like fully, I don't, yeah, it hasn't changed to that, but like the other parts, like people
Mm,
do see different versions of yourself. And I think also people bring out different versions of you too, like maybe around just because, Calgary's home and familiarity, you like default to one setting and like now it's different and like, unknown and whatnot, you default to another, right? But it's also nice to see different dynamics because if you just stayed in Calgary, then you would have just had that box image of like who you are, that you were meant like this is just who Helen is, but like that's not true at all, you can go into so many different trajectories.
yeah. Yeah, I mean I think you bring out a good point too. Like people also bring out different versions of
Mhm.
yourself as well, which is like the interesting part of like making new friends.
It is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, because I always like find it interesting because I think I am like I seek for growth, and I want to grow, I want to change, but at the same time I always think that I'm a pretty like stagnant person, or like pretty not I think stagnant is like a bad, like a negative connotation too, what I'm trying to think about. But like I feel like fundamentally I've been the same person since I was like 3 years old. Like I
Yeah.
don't think core things, the way that I see the world, the person that I am, or like the core version of myself hasn't changed like at all. And it's just like different waves, right? Like I think like if I think back to university, like when I first I think like even like high school, right? Like I think I ended out high school in a way where I was very satisfied with like how things were, and I felt like I worked hard, I felt like my hard work got recognized. And then so starting university, I was in more of a mellow like stage of like, okay, I'll keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm not gonna like force myself to like go like super like above or beyond. Like I'll just do what I need to do, because it was, I think I was slightly burnt out from high school. And then but then like slowly through, even though I was saying that I'll just do whatever it like makes sense to do, it like naturally I still end up doing the things that I would have done anyways, like without like I still naturally end up getting like wanting to do more, wanting to become something bigger. And um like at the beginning of university could not conceptualize what that looks like, right? Like
Yeah.
like the farthest my brain could go to is like, okay, like I want to work a downtown job, like, which then I was like, okay, I want to make money. And then like, okay, I look at people around me that might be like a year older, like, oh, where does everyone intern?
Yeah.
Furthest point like my brain could conceptualize was oil and gas and like, working at TC Energy. Like that's my internship. And I was like, oh, like that was like, okay, like that's a goal. And then like, so like, yeah, which is not obviously where we ended up and where we're looking at, but I think like it's interesting to see like different stages of my life, what like objectively speaking, whatever I think the reality is around me might be different at different times, but I think the core of like what you are meant to do is also like, like I think, well, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know
it's
how to end that off, but like,
yeah, I understand
uh,
because it's like I feel like like for example, when you're talking about the transition from like high school or yeah, high school to university, it's like, yeah, like different environments, bring out different versions of you, different jobs, different people, different like yeah, life like yeah, we're like yeah, everything, right? But then for you, even though that, you still ended up in your default setting eventually, like you found your way through. So I think that's just something in a way that's also good to know that, when we're in our 20s, that like even if we're not in a place that we want or in a job that we want or with people that we don't want, I think that if we just continue being ourselves and like going through that pathway, like eventually it like work out and like you will, I don't know, go back to like what you wanted to do when you were like a child, and maybe if that takes like months or years or however long, right, like it's going to find its way back. So I agree with that too. I mean, right now this is just a prediction for the future, but I do like to hope that like even if I think right now like a lot of the people that that are within our age range, like I don't see them. I mean, when we talk about it, it's not like we're gonna work this job for the rest of our lives, or like even necessarily maybe even live here or have these hobbies, right? Like maybe these are like the stuff that we're doing, we're not fully passionate about, or we're not finding the most purpose in it, right? But that doesn't mean that it has to feel purposeful in this time of our lives. I think that even if we do, like maybe, for us figuring ourselves out will take like years down the road, right? So I think I like to see that, Eva, maybe we are introduced to like more different environments that do bring different sides of us. So it's gonna be like, I'm glad that we definitely took that leap of faith and like, I think first of all, yeah, like how you mentioned that all we knew was like TC Energy before and like downtown office Calgary job. But I think that we would have just, our personalities would have just been the personalities that we knew back then, like I can see some growth, but I think that the biggest growth so far has been like, definitely the move and like seeing what we like, what we don't like, where we fit in the best. And like, I think being really uncomfortable in like stuff that we like thought we did and like whatnot. I think that that's been like a big indication of like, at least we're going towards a direction that I don't know, like we don't know where, but it's like at least growing and aspirational. So I'm excited to see where the future goes.
yeah, yeah. I think I wanted to say something I forgot. But or this is like kind of random, but I think like because whenever Alex is talking about his life and or Alex being my boyfriend, like who grew up in America, grew up in Korea, who grew up in China, like different places, very different like life experience than I had, and like was exposed to a lot more different things growing up than I also was, and like a lot of what he says is like being exposed to different things is the best thing. Like obviously in a if you have the capabilities of providing that for your child, it's almost like one of the best things, right? Because you see what things are for what it is, right? Like you don't have this like romanticization over everything that there is. You see it for what it is. Like if you're a child that like your parents were maybe engineers, your parents were like already climbed the corporate ladder, you can kind of see that reality. Or if you like see people around you that are doing like big things or like going to good schools and they're ambitious, they've walked certain roads, and you get to see like that side of things. And I think like he was saying that that was one of the most important things, like for what he thinks is like for like a for growth of a child to in order to propel them to like what they need to do or what they like. If you're someone that has like bigger dreams and ambition, and even if you don't, like I think seeing those things out too also eliminates a lot of unknowns while you're like younger. And I was trying to like reflect on my life, and I think like, you know, obviously like it's very very different experience growing up. And like I think that like the TC energy thing is like super true, right? Like, you know, people around me, like what I knew as a benchmark, I always tried to at least do the best of like what my benchmark or what my environment is, right? Like when I went to university, like I never second guess like U Calgary that much, because like the smartest people around me at that time, like that were graduating high school with me, a lot of them from my school, like also ended up going to U Calgary. So I'm like, okay, it's like not that big of a difference. And then like, you know, now seeing how that is perceived, like after I moved, and like, you know, having these conversations, like this is a tangent. I mean, like
Wait, what do you
I
mean
don't
by
know who's gonna
perceived?
watch. I don't know who's gonna watch to this point of the video, but like this is a tangent. But like even like small things, like Americans care so much about the school that you come from. I
Mm,
think the school that you go to also like dictates more, like in the scale of like America. I don't know, but like, you know, the fact that I went to U Calgary when it's not even the best university in Alberta, because by ranking standards,
it
Alberta is better.
is.
It's crazy to someone like Alex, where I'm like, bro, like trust me, when you're there, it made no sense to go to U Alberta instead of U Calgary, like, you know,
Mm,
ranking wise. Whereas for him, right, like in Texas, like UT Austin is the best public university in Texas. So
mm,
if you're applying to any universities, like it made no sense for you to go to like UT Dallas, UT Houston, or like even like Texas A&M if you got into accepted into UT Austin, right? But that's just not the reality of like Canadian like education system. Anyways, that's a tangent. But then like I don't know, like it's just like it never. I think I'm so much of a propelled by my environment type of person, and I think that's
mm,
why like this year, these past 2 years, like, you know, has been like pretty big. I think like I realized that there's more to this world, so I want to see out more. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I glamorize or like I think like certain things or certain people are cooler, but it's just like, okay, like I want to see how it looks like, so then I know how to like apply it to my life. And I think you should take advantage of San Francisco to do that for yourself too, because um I think it's nice. I think especially, I mean, like you've moved for like 2 months. There's really not much, like, you know, you
yeah,
literally you spent the 2 months finding a new apartment, moving into your new apartment, starting your new job, like, you know, grocery shopping, buying some, like it's,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not saying you need to like rush into this. It's definitely nothing you need to rush into. Like you need to get your life started there, like a foundation first, which is like what Calgary Friends and like
yeah.
familiarity is great for, right? Like having that support network. But I think like when I want to move to like, you know, I think SF, I think that's the part that I want to tap into more. And I think
Mm,
you should, the next step for what you do is like once you come out of Calgary, it's not just about the city, right? Like I think a big part of it is the people and like what the possibilities are. And
mm,
as great as our friends are, like, you know, you already know what, like even like, you know, all your friends of friends, right? Like mutual friends, again, as great as everyone is, and like everyone is in their 20s pursuing things, like, but you already know how that looks like, right? Like
yeah,
you
sure.
would have heard about stories from your mutual friends, and like you already know what everyone's doing. I think
Yeah.
it's like it's more valuable to go out and seek out something that's unfamiliar, and that's like the thing
Mhm.
that I think would help us grow and expand our minds.
No, I agree. You are right. Like, I think that when you said like I should take advantage of San Francisco more, I was like reflecting back on before I left. And, like, I think you said like before you left, you were doing a bunch of like social activities and hanging out with people a lot. Like for me, I realized like I didn't. Like I think I only
Yeah,
had
yeah,
one.
it was the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the opposite. I had like one big social event, or not even social event. They just had like a board game night, and then I said my goodbyes. But then, like I remember with that, I was saying like one of the things that I really wanted was like to meet like crazy people, like random people, like stuff that I
Mm.
like, for me to be proven that like my way of life is like not the way that I think it is, like, just to be like a complete 180, right? Even if it's like someone that's completely living a different lifestyle than me, and like, maybe they're, I don't know, yeah, just some random person in our age doing like someone like Alex, like doing a startup, or like, I don't know, just making stuff that I didn't think was possible, because, it is one of the most innovative cities in the world, right? And like just finding like the endless, limitless possibilities that there is like something that I feel like I was craving for so long. And obviously, maybe it's not like a big linger into it's not a big motivating factor, but it is like something that's been like lingering me like thoughts when it comes to like meeting new people of like, just I feel like because we have been surrounded for so long by around the same archetype. Like I think I'm yeah, like pretty much the same, like, even how I act and operate is not all that different from someone else that grew up in a very similar trajectory in Calgary, Alberta, who's also like an immigrant, right? But it'd be really cool to see people who are like of different lifestyles, who are doing like crazy things, because I think that that's in a way, like, what's the opposite of like even yeah, I guess like there's this side of like people who do ground you, but I feel like growing up in Calgary, which we did, we grounded for so long, we had one side pulling us for so long that we don't have the other side pulling us enough. I think that's what's like somewhat needed. So I am
Yeah,
excited to see that. And
yeah,
this is like random too, just a tangent I was thinking about when I'm thinking about the two different ends of like sides pulling you. I remember right before I left, I think this also goes back to like why I've been like craving familiarity and like everything like that. But before I left, what's it called? Like I think that, for so long that I wanted something bigger, like, San Francisco or New York, right? That like,
yeah,
after that, now that like right when I got my visa and immigration, like that time I was like, wait, like what's next? Like, I think because I didn't have that push pulling me out of that, right? Like one end
yeah,
was like what I thought ideally was like maybe getting like something like a very crazy innovative job in like maybe San Francisco, New York. And the other end was like, stability in Calgary. But then after, I'm like close to one end of a spectrum. And then I'm kind of like, I don't have the other pull, like there's not that much pull from the other direction. But for me, I kind of put that imaginary boundary of like where I think my life could go. And I put it at like maybe right now, yeah, like San Francisco, New York type areas, right? But then it's like because of the fact that there wasn't anything pulling me that direction, then I kept
mm,
pulled back to Calgary. I was like, oh, I miss stability and like Calgary
mm,
cozy lifestyle and like a normal 9 to 5 and
yeah,
all of that, right? So then now I think I've definitely gotten better at it where I'm not looking at the other side of the thread that's pushing me, pulling me, but I think more so on the other end. And I'm trying to like figure out what it might be on the other end. Maybe I do figure it out, maybe I don't. But I think that that's been like, something that I was thinking about lately of like, like before all the logistics and moving and like all the day-to-day mundane life, like I forgot to the core, like, why I did decide to come, like why, I should take advantage of San Francisco. It's like one of the most craziest innovative places in the world.
yeah. I think what you said for grounding is actually interesting because I talk about this with Alex a lot because I think like you and Alex are kind of similar archetypes of people. Um, I wouldn't put myself in the same archetype actually. Like I think we
Really?
like to talk about like being thinkers and like whatever, whatever. I like thinking. I mean, like I'll think, but I'll think. I think therefore I am, but I don't think I'm the same archetype. Where like I think the the bare minimum to propel me to do something, the bar for that is a lot lower because I feel like I mean, like I don't know, like we talk about it, like whenever I talk about this with Alex, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's like it's good in the sense that I think I'm someone that will always be propelled to do something, even when like there's no clear like I don't need a clear reasoning or a purpose. But I do think like for people like you guys, where I think you really need to like understand the reality of everything around you in order for you to like you need to understand something in order for you to do something. I think that's like the minimum of it. Whereas like for me, I think sometimes I can just like get a 50% understanding if I know that in general it'll bring me like positive energy. I'll continue on it. And where I was going with this is I think like we think about like on the other end when you're talking about the two polar ends of the spectrum, we think about it as Calgary as stability and grounding, and then the other side is something that's so abstract, dreamer, XYZ. But I think is that I think the other side is also the opposite. And like how do I put this?
Does it kind of
I
like
think
merge into a circle? Is that what you're talking about?
I think for you to actually be on the other side too, not just the Calgary side, like the stability side, I think to be the on the other side, you need to seek for things that also ground you. like I think right now it's still something that's like somewhat ambiguous, and that's why like when you say, okay, like once you got the job in SF, once you got your visa through it, once you got through, then you're like, now what, right? Like because I think in the back of your mind for a long time, which makes sense because you haven't seen it for what it is, like, right? Like you're glamorizing and
Mhm.
like kind of like I like putting like the life that is like in these big cities in a very idealized like perspective of like it is somewhere that's full of dreams, full of like, that allows you to grow to your potential, that allows you to do XYZ, which is true. But I think the next step now that you are here is that like you need to debunk all the theories that you have had about it, which is like a can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like you might glamorize like the same way that when we were in Calgary, right? Like before going to big tech, before like having knowing people that are in it, like you will tend to glamorize it a little bit more and be like, oh, these people work at these companies, then they must be like smart or whatever. Or like when I was looking at grad school, like these people like went to these schools, they must be like like certain types of archetype of people, they must be certain people. And I think a big part of like what I've been doing this year, or like at least trying to do, is like debunk a lot of that, right? Like what I used to glamorize because I didn't know anything about it. Now that I have access to those networks, now that I have access to that life, I think the goal is to see it for what it is and see it for what it isn't. So you know exactly what to extract out of it in order to like provide yourself with the things that you need in order to grow into the person that you want to be. And I think that part comes that is why it's so important for you to meet people that are better than you, that are in better states than you are in, or like that are in this, by better I mean like they're in the future state of who you want to be at, or like where you want to be, rather than just the people that are immediately in your circle, which are still also valuable. Like it brings different values,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I think it's like one thing to be like glamorizing it, but also I think the bigger thing is like once you debunk it for what it is, I think you get to figure out like yeah what the reality of the world is, and for whatever you're doing you can find more meaning to it. And I think it
mm,
sounds all super abstract, but for example like um
yeah,
actually like yeah for we're talking about like people that think, right? Like thinkers, or like you're talking about how you crave that like connection and like that trait in people, and that's like something that you're drawn towards, someone that challenges you and someone that thinks like that a lot. And like I think, for example, Alex was that type of person that he used to be super like, he did a philosophy minor, right? Like he like is
so
someone
fun.
that's super like into wanting to think that, and then like at some point he kind of debunked it for himself too. A person that just thinks for the sake of thinking, you're just a philosopher, and like that's not what he wants to be. Like he doesn't want to be a philosopher. Like he doesn't want to just sit around and think. And like he kind of de-glamorize that aspect. He kind of like debunks that for himself because he's like, to be the person that he wants to be, like thinking is a good thing, but it's not necessarily like the thing that you need, right? Like there's people that can get to where he wants to be without being that person. But I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, it's honestly, that is a good perspective because I do agree. I think I like even I know this is an example, but the glamorization of like maybe someone who would challenge me because at the end of the day, just someone who's like, you know, I feel like just bouncing off ideas of one another, like having a conversation like us and like, asking like why, or stuff like that, right? But then I think sometimes I can get in the bubble of like, you're just saying like just to think to just thinking to think or whatever that was that you said. I'm like, yeah, that's like such another end that I'm like, wait, that does not sound appealing at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, because but like that could be a lot of people, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that you have to separate out, right? Like once you, and that the reason why you're glamorizing it, which makes sense, is because you feel like it's something that's lacking in a lot of the like in the previous connections that you have had or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
not yeah. So you glamorize it because you just got a taste of what it should be or what
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
could look like, and then you're like, okay, like that makes a lot of sense. But I think that goes for everything else in life, right?
Mhm.
Like you glamorize it because you don't have access to it. Then
Yeah.
once you have access to it, you should try to debunk it for what it is and what it isn't. And then like then you kind of figure out like what I think you want to be. And I
Mm.
don't know. To me, it all sounds very abstract too, because I think,
That makes
but
sense.
I think, yeah, I feel like for you, like it might be more applicable because I think, especially for you trying to navigate through San Francisco. Again, I don't think you need to like rush into any of this. You literally just moved like 2 months ago, so it's gonna be like a lot of waves of like doing things that might not make the most sense. Like like a lot of things will be band-aids, but like so what? Like you kind of need band-aids sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like you feel like you need like like life isn't just about finding the most optimal solution every time you are faced with a challenge or you're faced with something different. But I think I think meeting new people is a good next chapter of your life, and I think in a way I'm somewhat projecting because I do think that's what I would want out of San Francisco. Like if I moved there, or when I moved there, I think that's like one. I mean, it's not just San Francisco. I think that's a in life thing, but I
Yeah.
think like the possibilities of that is greater in a more like population dense area, in a place where like people go there for work and it's in similar like field as you're passionate about, etc. And yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of climate tech, like that was like a lot of what you wanted to do before, right? A lot of startups and
Yeah.
um,
And then
yeah.
that was good. That was a good tangent. That got me thinking. Funny enough, I was actually making notes because I was like, no, you're
People that think for the sake of thinking are just philosophers. But philosophers are just like the modern day, like I don't know, like you're just like they can arrive at the same conclusion, but what's the absolute truth, right? Like,
yeah.
what do you want to be, right? Like, do you want to be someone that brings impact, brings change, and like etc. Like, what is necessary for that?
Yeah. And then that gets too much. And then that's like a whole other tangent. But no, no, that was a good talk. I'm glad. I know we're like nearing an hour and a bit. So I think this is like a good conclude. I wanted to honestly make it 30 minutes, but I think we just keep talking. And then now
We're just yappers.
it was yappers, but no, I'm so glad because I can just yap to you and I'm like, oh, it's so good and I love it. And it's also nice to just like catch up with you like this and like, have these things documented, hopefully that, we can look back on it. This was like really a good conversation. Like I think I don't know, we didn't have a main theme. I mean, it was a bit about like moving and like that transition in life, but I think we just were able to jump on like so many different background, like I don't even know tangents we went on. Like
Yeah,
I'm gonna like
yeah.
listen back and be
I
like,
also really needed this yap session, as you can tell. I feel like I was going off of tangents for like 10 minutes at a time. So thanks for listening.
of course. And like, yeah, thank you if people do get, I don't know, listen to the whole hour. But this is really good. And wait, we should make this like a weekly thing. Are you good for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm down. This is just yapping for me. I don't know. Yeah, of course, bro. Like, why wouldn't I be down?
So true. And I feel like this is so different in the sense like we don't have to have a camera set up, we don't have to do anything. We just yap, like we're just chilling, just a hangout and people are just third wheeling, I guess. I don't know. But
I'm actually so sometimes like I think the more clickbaity ones where we like do a little episode for like talking through topics, and you were like a good podcast person, right? Like you plan out like topics and questions and
yeah,
whatnot. Like those ones I'm like, okay, people are probably gonna watch it through, but for some of these I'm like, I don't know, like I don't even know if anyone's gonna make it till the end. But if you do, bro, like
thank you.
if you're one of our longtime mutual friends and
Yeah.
you're just watching this and like they're like, oh, that's good to know what Farron and Helen has been up to. Like
That's
DM
true.
us. Like,
It's
it's
so
just
funny. I remember I had friends who, like, obviously, like, some of them never met Helen, but they're like, oh, yeah, I know Helen. They just knew her through my YouTube videos. And they're like, oh, yeah, like, how's Helen doing?
yeah, I love that though. Like
That was
I
a fun
love
time.
the,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, I think we should wrap it up. And yeah, next week, maybe, yeah, I think we can structure it, see where it goes from here. But it was a good initial episode. And hopefully this downloads. Oh my God, if it does, no, it's going to download. There's no way that it isn't. But
Yeah,
yeah. Okay,
yeah.
I'll stop recording now. But any last words before I end off?
Well, I mean, if we're gonna do it every week, I'll have many words going forward. So no last words. I am a
No last words.
person of many words.
We have
It's
so
not
many words. I
yeah,
know.
it's not very coherent thoughts too.
Huh?
But none of my thoughts this episode was coherent, but I think
Yeah,
like it
not a,
was
no, mine
fun.
was,
Yeah,
but I feel like this is
yeah.
a good reflection of our personalities. Like some people talk more structuredly, but I think we don't have a beginning or end. It just goes.
Yeah.
Okay,